Ti hei mauri ora ki te whai ao, ki te ao marama te hei mauri ora. Hei kupu tuatahi māku e te atua nāna nei nā me katoa. E rauranga tirama and mātā waka e nā hau e whā, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou ki te kaupapa o tēnei rā, tēnā koutou ki te whare e tū nei, nō reira tēnā koutou, kino tātou katoa. As said, my name is Peter Waru and I'm the Regional Manager for Family and Community Services for the Central North Island, also affectionately known as Te Puku o Te Ika. I'm very privileged to be standing next door to Enid Ratahi-Pryor, representing Ngāti Awa today, and often representing a lot of other initiatives, probably spending more time down here than in her rohe, because of the experience that she has. So I'm very, like I said, very privileged to have this opportunity. I'm going to be passing it over to Enid a little bit later, but so I'm just going to carry on. Do you want to work our machine first? Straight into the presentation. Code 1 and 2, respect and cultural context. Respect, it says it all. Much of that is about gained through historical relationships. My personal involvement with Ngāti Awa has been over probably about 15 years. My role with Ngāti Awa in the last 6 years involved with government. It's very much about who you know, what you know, rather than what you know, or who you represent. But it is again through history. MSD has been involved with Ngāti Awa, so have many other ministries. So in relation to Ngāti Awa, they're not a stranger to government. So, and neither is Enid, and neither are members of her board. So a key one there is a proven track record of both parties reduced to compliance. The reality is, because of the relationships we have, because of the opportunities we have to have those multiple interactions, the trust factor becomes a lot more evident, and you can have those conversations that you normally couldn't have with in a provider funder split. You can actually have a community conversation. I leave the official stuff to Wellington, and the relationship we have at a regional level is very much on, so what's the best for this community? What is the best for Whakatane? What is the best for the Bay of Plenty? What can we contribute to that? So that's a conversation that's had at that level. You know, we're in this together. This is not just about Ngāti Awa, this is about Ngāti Awa in the context of culture has a kaitiaki role to play in its role that it has in the Whakatane area and across the Bay of Plenty. So we're in this together. Ministries, it's known that ministries will often come and go. Ngāti Awa and those that have that kaitiaki role aren't moving. They're not up and lifting and going to Australia. Whānau will, but Ngāti Awa's not.
If I could just add to that, because we're in this together.
Ka, get the point.
I'd just like to add that this is a mutual arrangement. It's not only government looking at a provider and thinking, can I trust that provider, and what respect do I have to pay to them? But it's also about the provider, and in our particular situation, we will always look at the government department or the contract manager and think, can I trust you? Can I trust your system? Can I trust the way you work? So it works both ways. And again, do I respect you? Do I respect the way you work? And do I think we have a respectful relationship? So it's very important to look at it from both sides of the fence. And in terms of we're in this together is really, really important, because in the high trust contracting environment, we had a few walkaways from the table. It wasn't an agreement that was signed overnight. wasn't signed over 2 months. It actually took 3 months worth of hard negotiation. And at the end of the day, the answer was, we're in this together through highs and lows. And that simple statement actually did it. And it wasn't the detail, it was that. We're in this together. So moving on, shared vision together.
Yeah. An interesting one, when we approached Enid about the possibility of Ngāti Awa becoming one of our high trust contracts, actually the first high trust contract, we had to be really honest with Enid and say, we want to invite you to be a part of this thing, and there is no new money. So we got that out of the way really quick.
Something seriously wrong with that statement.
But we didn't want to cloud it over as if it was, there's an opportunity here, there's an opportunity. There was actually no new money. The opportunity here was the principle of a new way of practice. And once we got past, there was no new money, and Enid said, "Ke te pai, let's move on."
So what you're telling me, Pete, is you want to play with our $3.5–4 million worth of money? Go back to Wellington. We already know what we're doing. So it was a very interesting concept that they should come in. We want to trust you better. But on the other hand, we're saying, but we've already got your money. Why would we want to change tack here? So again, you know, we had a very clear position of, one, we believed it was our money. Well, hey, that's not the case at all. But it was very interesting that in the initial discussions, that was our behaviour. So it took us a wee while to get to the point where this is actually about outcome, and it's actually about the long-term sustainability of delivery to the region. So it's quite hard rocking up to a provider and saying we now want to do something very different with your dollar, and we're not giving any more money for you to figure it out. So a lot of tension there. Moving on.
And one of the key ones for me was, let's just share the vision first. Let's just get a sense of what this is about. No obligations. You know, we're not going to say you have to do this because we're contracted to you, because we would like to invite you to be a part of this. And Ngāti Awa's role in this was, thank you for inviting us. We'd like to invite you to be more clearer on what you're inviting us to.
In actual fact, we think we might help you to write our contract. So moving on, just we're going to go into the cultural context, and we'll use the example of the situation we have.
Just staying with that one, the empathy and understanding, face to face. Get in the same room together, have a coffee, have a conversation, be clear that this is a new opportunity. It's not, you have to do this, because we've decided that we've got a deadline to meet and we need you to do this. We did have a deadline to meet, and she put the deadline on the shelf and said, the trust was there. We've got the historical trust there. The movement to this new opportunity was still going to take us time. And it's not necessarily because of the trust, it was because of the conversation we needed to have internally, and then Ngāti Awa had to go and have a conversation internally, and then have face-to-face with their own people, then come back together and say, we have some grounds to sit and move forward on. And very much moving from that holistic approach to the service provision. So we purchased this, and this, and Ngāti Awa was saying, cool, we want it all in. And the reason why, because families don't just do this, this and this. They go right through the continuum, cradle to the grave. That's the type of services we were purchasing of Ngāti Awa at the time, and still are. Kei te pai?
Kei te pai. So, what does that mean in terms of the cultural context? The bubbles, the little bubbles, are all of the different programs. Under each program there are multiple contracts, but ultimately each bubble represents a service or a program that is delivered by Ngāti Awa. In this bottom corner, 1989 was the very first contract. Most of you will be aware of Mātua Whāngai. It was when government came out to iwi and said you can look after your own. At that point in time, 1989, you'll note we had low capacity and capability. At that point in time, it was also one of our first services, so it was all pretty new. Now, throughout time, and this is your time span, contracts with the Ministry of Social Development grew, whatever they were called at that point in time, and then added on health. What you can actually see between 1989 and 2010 is not only a development of service, but it is also a development of the trust curve. This is where the trust was when government first came to us. In actual fact, many of you who were involved in Mātua whāngai would know there wasn't a hell of a lot of trust at that point in time. But over time, the trust grew, and with the growth of trust, so too did the capacity and capability of the organisation to deliver. When you look at high trust contracting, this is the high trust line. You can't go into high trust contracting unless, as Peter said, you have a historical relationship. There is the historical relationship, but more importantly, the contribution of each funding contract to this curve has actually increased capacity and capability. So the kōrero for you from me today is that trust actually comes as a result of increased capacity and capability. A lot to talk about on that. In terms of high trust contracting, the high trust contract takes this contract, that one, that one, that one, and that one, and joins them up into one contract. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's that easy, but that's the intention. What should occur is that these yellow contracts, which belong to the health sector, should also be joined up in a high contract type environment, which would actually ease the compliance for the provider. The second one here is about kaupapa Māori, and up the side again is capacity and capability, and as you can see, capacity and capability at this point in time is high. Down below is your community reach, participation. Initially, we were a Māori for Māori by Māori organisation. That's where our heads were. But as respect grew, now I'm not talking about just the respect between each other, kanohi ki te kanohi, value respect, respect my values. It was actually about respect coming from another quarter. It was actually the community respect. As the organisation's trust grew with the government, as the respect between the government and ourselves grew, multi-contracts, so too did the community trust and respect, which then brought Māori for Māori by Māori into a much bigger space. Now this doesn't occur for every iwi Māori organisation, but for an organisation of our size, we had to take the values of who we were into a wider catchment. And so respect and trust and kaupapa Māori, or working within a cultural context, is a lot bigger than the direct relationship that you have as funders with the provider. The key point was around long-term vision. What you see here is actually a long-term vision of iwi that has been there since 1989. Individual contractors come in and out. They can come in 2008, 2009. The vision of iwi and Māori will stay the same because, as Peter said earlier, we are connected to the whenua, we are connected to the community, and our visions will long surpass the immediate interaction or intervention of the government program. Finally, what does that mean underneath all of this? I'm wrapping up here. That purple box is actually the high trust contract. Those are the amalgamation of contracts, and these ones here are health. We would hope that we can actually amalgamate some of those into one high trust contract, Ministry of Ed, and this is a PHO environment, a very different one. As you can see, I've just cut a slide from another presentation. The point I'm actually going to make is that the contracting that can happen as one individual funder has got huge implications for some of the outcomes with iwi and Māori. What I'm trying to show here is the IT advancement that we have made as an iwi. So what I mean by that, by joining up the contracts, by streamlining them, we are now able to connect with the general practice practices within the Eastern Bay of Plenty via the PHO. We have a system that is going to bring about joint planning, joint management plans with families, with clients. So a simple contract negotiation has a bigger role in terms of the overall vision of the iwi. That's our time. We've got workshops and we can talk a little bit more about this in detail then. Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa.